Alright, hi guys. We're just out here doing some of these learning labs. These videos are intended for the University of Denver Graduate School of Social Work and the community at IHAC, the Institute for Human-Animal Connection. But of course, anybody's welcome to watch them. Today we're just talking about methodology. So one of the biggest questions we get asked is, how do we train animals? How do we train dogs? And I always think first animal, second species, third breed. If I know it, that's great, just because of what implications breed characteristics, species characteristics, and animal characteristics bring to training. So first, let's just talk basic modality. How do we train animals? Well, they're non-verbal creatures. Well, Ozzy's kind of verbal. Yeah, see? And we use so many words. So the key first is starting with a common language, and that's body language and gestures. So first what we do is this process of acquisition, repetition, fluency, and generalization. And by that I mean we teach something, we acquire a skill, we have to figure out how do we do that? How do we manipulate a non-English speaking animal to do the things we want them to do? Sled dogs talk, right? So when we consider breed, species, animal, we know we're gonna have behaviors. So what if I wanted to change this behavior, this talking, all this? What choices do I have to make? Well, first of all, let's just take a big step back. So how do we acquire a new skill? First is motivation. We need to motivate. So I'm just gonna use food, get them following me. We manipulate the animal. This is bribery or lure training. Yes, I'm gonna say yes as a reward marker. We don't speak the same language, but a neutral sound, the word yes, or a clicker, or some sort of marker, can be a good indication to the nonverbal creature that they did the right thing. Yes, rewarded behavior gets repeated, he's going to offer it more and more. Eventually all this lure training turns into signals. Yes, signals start to get paired with our verbal language. Are you ready? Okay. Ozzy, sit. Good, sit. Yes. Good boy. Eventually all this help starts to fade out. Instead of using food, we have a variable system of reinforcement where sometimes I pet, sometimes I talk, sometimes I praise. Ozzy, come. Sit. Good, sit. No, into the sit. Good boy. Then binary feedback starts to give way. He's about to go through all his behaviors. We default sit. When you're using motivators, food's the easiest. You can manipulate food, you can withhold food, you can raise the value of food. So it's often used. People feel like, how long do I have to use treats with my dogs? Well, until you have a relationship, or until you yourself are a mega secondary reinforcer. By that I mean this is a primary reinforcer. Food. All animals need food, right? Yes, good boy. But eventually we want the food to go away. We want the dog to offer the behaviors, not only because he knows they're the right thing to do, but because he wants to do them. So Ozzy's barking and speaking. He's excited. Guess why? Mega secondary reinforcer. So play is so much better because it builds that human-animal bond, because you still have a motivated dog. So look at, it's still lure training. I'm getting him to do what I want him to do through shaping exercises. Good, go around. Good. Yes, it's still my verbal reward marker. Get up, Ozzy. Yeah, good boy, he got it. So the whole point is, my timing now sucks. My dog's so far away from me, my repetitions go down. Good boy. But I keep him working and wanting to do it. It's really fun. So play takes a history of reinforcement. So as he knocks over the camera working with his frisbee, I have to start somewhere. So start with food. So acquisition, repetitions. Best part about play is I want to throw it again. I'm desperate to throw it. Drop. Good. So I'm more likely to do more repetitions regularly. And this is an exercise outlet. Down. Down. Speak. 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 Yes. So that problem behavior he was just doing of barking using his voice, I can use that as part of training. Give a natural outlet for it. So essentially we go through this process. How do we acquire a new skill? How do we do enough repetitions that the dog learns fluency? And then can I do it all over the place? Notice my leash is here. I'm wearing the leash. This is because responsible dog owners have their dogs on leash. The thing about training is training can't happen on leash. You have to find safe ways to practice. So whether this starts in your home in a dog training studio, tennis court, softball field, somewhere where your dog is safe for you to work on the skills. This is leash minding. We gotta teach our dogs how to walk on a loose leash, but first and foremost, we need to teach our dogs language, communication, and how to be. Our dogs can't do anything because of they're worried about getting in trouble or because of the pre-punishment or pre-reward cues, and we'll get into that as we go through this program. So second and foremost, we need to understand what are our options. How do we teach? So the modality of, obviously here we're using a lot of positive reinforcement and shaping techniques. Shaping, again, is just luring dogs with something motivating until they perform a certain way, and then giving feedback. When you're doing free shaping, that's when you're just basically following the dog around and giving feedback and saying, oh, I like that behavior, I like that behavior. Free shaping, the dog is choosing the behaviors. Oh, come here. He wants to lay right next to the camera to see if he can knock it over. So when you're going through this process, you've got shaping, free shaping, capturing behavior that's happening right in front of you. Everybody does this through potty training, right? Dog pees and we go, oh, good potty, good boy. So we start giving that binary feedback. Placement is the one that works the least. That's where you see people press the dog's butt on the floor and say, this is sit. Sometimes we have to use placement. We use placement a lot through leash training. We're manipulating and moving the dog, but we're doing the work. The animal's not doing the work. That's why I stress off-leash training if you can find a safe way to do that. And then you need to think about your approach. You hear people call this philosophy. It's not philosophy. It's operant conditioning. So when we look at behaviorism, we have our choices. The quadrant of operant conditioning. Positive reinforcement, negative punishment, positive punishment. These words have associations in our brains. Let's just clear those up real quick. Positive and negative don't mean good or bad. They mean added or subtracted. So think math when you hear this. Positive reinforcement means you're adding something. Reinforcement just means it's increasing the frequency of the behavior. So don't think good or bad. Think, is the animal going to be more likely to produce the behavior or less likely? Is it going to discourage the behavior? So positive reinforcement, lots of people know that one. We're adding something. A lot of times it's food or some easy to manipulate motivator to increase the drive to perform the behavior. Negative reinforcement, that's kind of a tricky one. There's all sorts of different ways to use it. I think the best way for people to understand it is, you ever get in your car and it starts dinging, ding, 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 ding. Oh yeah, click. As soon as you hit that seatbelt, what happens? That annoying ding stops. So something is taken away to increase your behavior of buckling your seatbelt. What happens is your frequency of buckling your seatbelt goes up and you start to perform it faster and faster and faster. I hate that dinging sound. I don't want to hear one. I always have to remind my wife. I'm like, can you not hear it? It drives me crazy. So this is another way to manipulate and change behavior. Then you have negative punishment. Something's taken away to discourage the behavior. So if Ozzy was barking at me with a frisbee and I wanted him to stop barking, he starts barking. I give him a cue to do it. And I said, of course he's not barking now. Speak, good. And if he kept barking, I took it away. Good, quiet, good, good. Okay. And then I rewarded the quiet behavior. I would be removing something to punish the behavior of barking, right? My dog barks on cue because it's a behavior he offers, and I'd rather be a part of the behavior. The more we can make cues for behaviors we don't want our dogs to do all the time, jumping up, barking, pulling the leash, digging, rather than saying don't ever do them, why don't we say do them in this context? Ozzy, come here, paws up, good boy. Strangers aren't going to walk in my home and do that and have this big 65-pound dog jump on them and push them over. So rather than just trying to put it in to extinguish the behavior, we can often encourage the dog to do it only for a specific cue. When we're working on these, so let's keep going through, that negative punishment was one that we talked about. So we've got a distraction around them. Just working through a distraction as it comes up. But that's real life. That's what training is. Training is communication between two species. He knows what I need him to do. Good stay. While our distraction's going behind us, we've got a dog cruising around and a guy on bike. That's life. I don't have my dog on leash. I have to have trust, and I know that he's going to work through that situation. Positive punishment being the last part of that 4 quadrant. that we're talking about. Positive punishment means something added to decrease the behavior. The most common form, you might see leash and collar corrections, right? So the old standard was a choke chain, prong collars, these things used mostly by the military originally for these high drive dogs. So the dog's pulling the leash, they added that aversive consequence to decrease pulling. Here's the big warning: when we think about the intrusiveness of our interventions, I can't do any harm by giving my dog a positive reinforcement. We try to work on touch releases for consistency. Go ahead. But I can cause harm by using positive punishment. So I have to think about my modality. It's not about my philosophy. We have countless studies showing side effects of using punishment techniques. 2 reasons why. Punishment usually causes suppression. So if every time my dog pulled the leash and I yanked on a collar, he might get really good at leash walking. But I start damming up behavior. So if he's frustrated, he wants to run, all of a sudden one day there's going to be this big outlet. That's why we see it so much with animals in captivity. We see it so much in dog training. There's much higher incidence of leash aggression with dogs that are using punishment-based techniques. And the other is classical conditioning. So classical conditioning is the response the animal just naturally chooses. So if, you know, we all associate the old Pavlov dogs, but really think about it more about a feeling. So the dog starts to pair what's happening with the stimulus that's right in front of him. If my dog gets big consequences every time we see dogs on leash, I think, oh, maybe I'm correcting pulling, but he might think it's really scary when we see dogs on leash. Therefore, he has a different relationship with dogs on leash than he does with dogs off leash. Then people want to label everything, so they say the dog is aggressive.